Welcome to the 8th tutorial for this class. This tutorial is going to be on layers. You should have read this section on layers in chapter 2, so now we're going to apply that information to the software program. Over here is the panel where layers tools are located on the ribbon. And this box right here tells us what layer we're currently working on. You can change that layer by simply selecting it here. This list of layers automatically comes with AutoCAD, and their naming system is according to the National CAD standards. Let's click on this box right here. This is the Layer Properties Manager. And this is where you can edit, create, delete, modify layers. And right here it says that the current layer is C-annotate. So we could change that right here by clicking the checkbox to C-anno MTCH text and put it back on 0 here. This is where you put in the name of this is the name of the layer in this column. Right here, this just tells us whether the layer is on or off. You simply select the light bulb to turn it off and click it again to turn it back on. If the layer is turned off, you won't be able to see it in the drawing, and you won't be able to do anything with the objects on that layer. If it's on, you can. Then you also have, in this column, where you can freeze or thaw layers. So you freeze it, and it creates a little snowflake, or you thaw it, and it creates a little sunshine. Now, the difference between these two really is very minimal. If you have, let's say, these two layers are, this layer is turned off and it's frozen. And I draw things, and I have things drawn on that layer. When I click on this thaw button, the drawing will regenerate on the screen and show those objects. But if I have it turned off and I turn it back on, it will not regenerate the drawing. It's about the only difference that you have between them. Generally, things on a layer that I do not want to have anything to do with in the current drawing, I turn them off. I use my freeze and thaw layers commands to select what I'm going to work on. So if I'm working on drawing fence in, I might freeze everything else so I can just see the fence. And then after I'm done drawing things on that layer, I can thaw everything back out. But if it's turned off, then it won't come back on. I can thaw out just the things that I want to see for this drawing. A little bit may take you some time to understand and get used to, but with practice you'll get there. And this column is lock or unlock, and no objects on the layer can be modified if it's locked. So if I lock this layer, anything drawn on that layer cannot be changed at all. So that's kind of handy if you want to make sure nothing changes. This column's for the color, so that's what color that all objects on that layer will default to. You can also change it, but all the objects will default to white, and then if you want to make a certain object on that layer a different color, you can change that object in that object's property box. But for this purpose, you want to create most objects on this layer to be the same color. And as we talked about before, color is directly related to how thick the lines will print when you print them into the plotter in black and white. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then here you can assign a line type to a layer. So everything drawn on this layer will have a specific line type. So you can have a layer that all your water lines, and you can pick waterline to be that layer's line type. So every time you draw a line, it'll default to that water line type. And then on the line weight, most everything is selected to default. So, and that is related to the color. So a color might have a specific line weight assigned to it, and so your line weight will be a default. You can change that manually though for each object property. Transparency is changes the transparency for the objects on that layer. Plot style. This is related to plotting. We'll talk more about that when we cover plotting in the book. But each color has a pin assigned to it and a number assigned to it. White number is 7. And so you can tell in the plotter settings that you want color 7 to print at a certain width, and it will. You can also say you want blue to print color 7. But we'll talk about that more in plotting, but for now just leave those defaults. You don't want to change them. This column is a plot column, and so you can say on a layer that you don't want that layer to print. You can see it on your screen, but you don't want it to print. And so there are some cases where that's very handy. A new layer, VP Freeze. We haven't talked about layout. I'm sorry, we haven't talked about paper space yet, but that is what you need for paper spaces. It's related to that. So when we get there, we might talk about that too. And then finally in this column is the description of what that layer actually is. So in this one, it's a civil table. So your annotation tables will be on that layer. Okay. Also know that you can save and create layer state. So say you have certain layers turned off and certain layers frozen, and you like them to be a certain way, and you can save that layer state. Let me find it here. Right here is the layer state manager. It's a little bit more advanced for us right now, but just be aware that it's there, and in the future you might remember that and use it. Okay, so let's look at some of the layer tools. Let's draw some items on different layers. See if we can get different colors here. Okay. Oh, I have those turned off. Sorry. See, when I have that turned off, it didn't show. So let me go back to the properties manager. I forgot that I did that. You can right click. Oh wait. Let's right click, select all layers, and then if you turn one on that's off, it'll turn all of them on if you have them all selected. And thaw all, that will thaw all of them out too. So we have everything thawed out. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, so we have a few things shown here. Now, let's look at this tool. First, let's make objects layer current. So let's click that command, and down at the command line it says select objects whose layer will become current. Well, let's pick this one. Now, it's made that object's layer your current layer, so now you can work in it. So that's an easy way to pick it instead of having to pick it from this long list. Match. So say we want to put this circle on the same layer as this blue object here. Then we can say layer match, and it says select object to be changed. We want to change that. Right click, select object on destination layer, or you can type in the name. So let's select it, and then voila, it's moved to that layer. Previous. So it says undoes the last change or set of changes made to layer settings. So let's undo, and it restored the last. So see, it went back to this layer. Okay. So instead of being this layer current, now it's gone back to that layer. And layer previous is very handy. So let's look at this one. This freezes the layer of selected objects. So we want to freeze this layer, so that we can work with objects on that layer. So we right click to freeze those layers. Now we want them back on. So we hit this layer previous and they come right back on. Isolate. So say we want to lock all the layers except for one, which we did just a minute ago by freezing this layer and this layer. Well, let's isolate this layer by itself and right click. And there now everything's turned off except for that layer. It's the only one. And now we can do layer previous and I'll put them back on. You can also do unisolate because it may not have been the last thing you've done with layers. You can also unisolate with this command here. This tool here turns off the layer of a selected object. This tool is very handy. It turns all layers on. So a minute ago I went in and right click to select, but you can do it right here from this menu. You can turn all layers on. You can solve all the layers here. So you can lock the layer of a selected object, unlock the layer of a selected object, change to current layer, to select objects and put them on the current layer. You can copy objects to a new layer. So I want to copy this and put it on this layer here, and you can use that command. So that's pretty much all the layers. Deletes all objects on a layer and purges the layer. We want to get rid of a layer. So those are the layer tools that you'll use and find helpful. So if you want to create a layer, let's go back to this layer properties manager. Let's go through the process here of creating a layer. Okay, so let's right here. Whoop. New layer. And the first thing it wants to do is put in your layer name. So let's create a layer called, in all caps, water. I'm going to show you how to create layers in the naming scheme that I'm familiar with. Not familiar with the National CAD Standards naming scheme. So we're going to use the ones I'm familiar with. And in your homework assignment, you will create several layers according to this naming scheme I'm familiar with. And then you can select here whether you want it on, frozen, and let's keep it on and thawed out. And then pick the color. So for this color, for water, we're going to make them blue, okay? And we want to pick a line type. Well, we just recently created a line type called water, didn't we? So let's load one here. I don't have mine in there apparently. So I'm going to pick that one. And I'm going to go down here and select that line type. So that's the line type I want to associate with that layer. And I'm going to keep the line weight at the default because, as I stated earlier, I'm going to assign a pin width to that color later on when we talk about plotting. So I don't need to worry about the line weight. If I select blue, it's going to print at a certain width. And so we don't need to worry about transparency or plot style, and we do want it to plot. And then here, since it just copied the one above, let's change the description to just say water. You don't even have to put a description in, but we're going to do it just for fun. Okay, so now we have a new layer called water, and I'm going to make it current and close the box. And now it's current layer, and I'm going to draw a line and well, let's see what's going on with our line type. It is there, but our scale is too small, so let's change it. Let's scale it up to 100. Now, there we go. Now I've drawn a line with that on that layer, and it automatically made it blue and used the line type of a water line type. So that's how it works, and if you have any questions, just let me know.